Hello,
There he is.
how are you?
I am fine. So you needed a little extra time today, huh?
Yeah, I was just celebrating that the war is over.
Ah, yes. You mean the war between Argentina and Spain?
Yeah, were you watching it?
Watched a little bit of it. You know, it
Yeah, me
was
too. I had.
it, it was mixed emotions. I mean, I lived in Argentina. I like Argentina, but Malay and their pro-Zionist stance had me rooting for Spain.
Exactly. I think everyone. I did a tweet about it after Ben Gvir. So Netanyahu supported Argentina, then Ben Gvir did a video supporting Argentina. I think the support for Argentina just plummeted after that video.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
Even though I like Messi.
yes, those guys aren't political. But
Yeah, exactly.
unfortunately, the whole nationalistic element creeps in there.
Yeah, yeah. I like Milei. It's about his domestic policies, but when it comes to his support for Israel and Argentina's support for Israel, I think this is where we disagree. But in terms of the policies, domestic policies, I've interviewed him. I met his team. Now I think he's done a good job for the country. What do you think on his policies for the country domestically?
I'll wait a year and see. Having lived in, I lived in Argentina, 83, 84. Un desastre, as they say, un desastre.
Disaster, disaster.
Our Argentina just has, tilted from one disaster to another over the last 43 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is. I'll see. They did need to cut back the public sector. So Malay's been effective on that, but I'm not sure he's actually brought the kind of economic stability they need. It may be impossible.
Yeah. I hope he does. It's a beautiful country and incredible people. We have a lot of people in my team from Argentina. What's funny is that
whereabouts in Argentina? Are they all porteños?
I don't know. I have no idea. I know they're Argentinian because they started celebrating when Argentina won in our group, one of our groups in my company. They started celebrating when Argentina won. So I realized they were fighting. I had people in Britain. One of my writers is British. One of my writers is Spanish, and one of my team members, two of them are Argentina. So they started battling it out in the group.
Yeah, I lived in Cordoba, second largest city in Argentina.
All right, so congratulations to Spain. Now, in terms of the war, it's not looking good at all. It was a bit concerning to me how many people today were talking about the possibility of a ground operation. All of them agree it's a ridiculous idea or ludicrous idea, but they're all worried about it.
Well, let's put it in perspective. As an example, they're talking about maybe putting troops on Kemp's Island, right?
Kemp's Island, yeah.
Okay. Do you know how big that island is?
Yeah.
It's bigger than Okinawa.
Yeah.
During World War II, when the United States invaded Okinawa, how many troops did we have to invade Okinawa?
Tens and tens and tens.
190,000. Okay.
Jesus. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to attack an island with 150,000 people on it, with what, 5,000 soldiers, 2,000 soldiers? I mean, come on. It's just this kind of idiotic thinking is going to get a bunch of good American kids killed.
All right, let's go into the news, Larry. So we have a continuing build-up, a report by the New York Times of the end. No, sorry, not the build. This is the destruction of military equipment. We talked about it yesterday. Multiple Black Hawk helicopters, a significant number of Black Hawk helicopters in Jordan were damaged. And I had a specialist on the show earlier today, a former Navy SEAL, explaining to me when it says one of these aircraft is damaged, it takes a long time to repair those aircraft. So when you have Black Hawk helicopters damaged, as per the New York Times report, in Jordan in the last few days, or you have the fighter jets, the F-15.
But just a question though. So they destroy some Black Hawks. They're completely irrelevant to the air war with Iran. I mean, they're in Jordan.
Yeah. They're probably just used for the Strait of Hormuz before the full escalation. They were striking the ships.
No, it's too damn far for them to fly. Just
Not
look
from
up what
Jordan. I think they were deployed closer to the Strait of Hormuz because I remember those
look
ships.
look up the range of a Black Hawk. Look it up.
Oh,
And then say, how far is it from Jordan to Bahrain or from Jordan to Dubai?
so I think what I meant is they didn't use, so from Jordan they would have, because I know that there were ships that were struck by Hellfire missiles during the blockade. So the way the Americans enforced the blockade, you'd get all these reports and videos of the hold on, there was a Black Hawk helicopter shot down in the Strait of Hormuz as well. Do you remember? And they had to rescue the pilot.
No, that was an Apache helicopter.
Oh, okay. So is it the Apache that fires the Hellfire missiles?
I think so.
Okay, so they destroyed. Yes, Apache. You're right. So it's not the Black Hawk. So it's the Apache that I'm referring to, not Black Hawk. So they destroyed the damaged. It would take a long time to repair. They also destroyed an F-15 Strike Eagle in the last few days, according to the Wall Street Journal, in Jordan as well, and damaged several other fighter jets and drones in their attacks. So in the last few days, there's been a lot of damage, and I was going through it with a guest in the morning. If you look at all these different radar images, satellite images, that came out in the last 24, 48 hours, it just shows the scale of the damage in the various bases. But we've had multiple reports of the various aircraft, American aircraft, that were destroyed. Meanwhile, there's a pretty significant military buildup as well. Within the last few days, according to CENTCOM's, I think it's according to CENTCOM directly, they said they've deployed, I don't know what the, okay, that's Faytux. Faytux reports this. They've deployed 15 F-35s, 12 F-15s, 12 F-16s, 12 F-16s as well. So 24 F-16s, 12 F-15s, and 15 F-35s. And according to the New York...
And where are they basing them?
They moved them from... Yeah, they didn't say where they moved them to. I know that the refueling aircraft are all based in... probably in Tel Aviv, in Israel, because we've seen the report of over 100 aircraft coming to Israel. Israel made an announcement. All these reports came out of Israel. So I'm assuming, yeah. So Walla reports that there's 100 aerial refueling tankers coming into Israel by the US as part of the military buildup, as well as F-35s and F-15s. So I'm assuming they'd also be going to Israel along with everything else. And there was a strike today. There was a strike today. Oh, this one you'd like. You know how you were telling me about how the buildup of the aircraft in Israel would lead to the Iranians firing at Israel, dragging Israel into the war, firing at these bases. Well, they fired at a base. I wish I saved that. I'll try to find it. They fired at an airport, a military airport, or an airport in Jordan on the border with Israel.
Yeah, near Aqaba in the south. Yes.
Yeah. So they struck that one, and that was only about 9 miles, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from an Israeli base that has American refueling tankers there. And I think they started moving them out. So Israeli media started interpreting that as a warning to Israel, the strike on that base in Jordan.
Yeah. By the way, I just checked the mileage. So your typical combat radius for a Black Hawk is 368 miles. So basically it means you can fly one direction about 180 miles, then you're not 180 miles coming back. And to refuel, most of the Black Hawks, my understanding, can't be refueled from air. You have to land on the ground and refuel them. The distance from Jordan to Dubai, 1,200 miles. So basically, those Black Hawks can't even get there. That's if the Black Hawks were forward deployed to like Al Udeid or Al Dhafra, then maybe they could do something in the Gulf. But so destroying them, that's just removing troops locally in the vicinity.
Yeah, not as significant as damaging their.
Who is your former Navy SEAL?
He was on the show for the first time, and he was, funny enough, I thought you watched it because he started talking about how much bigger Qasem Island is from Okinawa, And he started going through how
really?
a ground operation. Yeah, we literally had the whole discussion about it. We spent about 20 minutes. He spent 20 minutes making the comparison to a ground operation in Iran, how that compared to what happened in the Japanese invasion on these islands. And he used the same example, mentioned numbers like you did, and talked about how much bigger Kashmir Island is. So I'm like, oh, Larry must have seen the interview, but it turns out to be a coincidence.
I didn't. So I'll just say, great minds think alike.
Oh, you would have loved that interview. He definitely said a lot of the same things. Oh, he mentioned our interview. He's watched our interview a few times, probably watching this one. Matt Bracken, great guy. First time on the show. He's pretty big on X. First time on the show. I saw his tweets. I actually saw his tweets pop up. He was making some good tweets. And then I asked him to come on the show, and the audience loved him.
Yeah, he's an FNG. It's an effing new guy. See, my generation of SEALs, my friends, they go back to the 1980s. So he could say we're a bunch of OFGs, old effing guys.
So on that strike on the Jordanian, I was trying to find a video with an image that shows how close it is to the Israeli base. I still want to find it because I think you'll find it interesting. But even the debris from that strike, the debris from that strike was intercepted by Israel. So people got worried, is Israel being dragged into the war? But this was an attack on the Jordanian base that we just talked about. So so Iran could be sending a warning right now to Israel that they could involve it in the war. But on that point, the Israeli media has been talking a lot about this. So Israel Hayom says, Israeli officials said Netanyahu's planned trip to the US next week to attend Lindsey Graham's funeral is at risk of being cancelled due to regional security tensions. Officials also expressed concern that Iran could target senior Israeli figures beyond Netanyahu, saying that there's an enormous number of people who are under threat. So that's in line with what we talked about 2 days ago. Remember how Netanyahu was trying to increase his security?
Right.
This one's, Israeli media is talking about the increased security threat for Israeli leaders.
Yeah.
And
also remember also today, I guess they're supposed to interview Bibi on like Fox News Sunday, and he bailed on that for some reason. So there's something going on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more the split between Trump and Netanyahu. I think there's a big power struggle happening there, or could be something completely different. Maybe they're just gone quiet before some sort of escalation. And there's a lot of talk about escalation, by the way, especially in the last few hours. I'll talk about in a second. But just on the Israel front, according to I-24, Israel will only join the current cycle of US-Iran attacks if Israel believes Iran is about to attack, so preemptively, which means anytime, they could just make it up, or if Trump formally requests Israel's participation. Channel 14 reports Israeli officials assess that Iran has been debating in recent days whether to launch an attack against Israel, but they believe no final decision has been made. A separate Israeli assessment suggests the US could ask Israel to join the military campaign against Iran if Iran does not directly attack Israeli territory. So there's a possibility that even if Iran doesn't attack Israel, Trump may request Israel to help. Ynet says the following: at this stage, the security establishment does not detect any Iranian intention or willingness to launch an attack against Israel in the immediate future. And this is the last one, is the Hebrew media says the Iranian attack on Aqaba is intended, so the Jordanian base in the south, and near the border with Israel, is intended as a warning to Israel. And lastly, Israeli Katz, Defense Minister Katz said, quote, "We have announced that if Iran fires missiles at Israel, we will strike it with force without any dependence or conditions." So this is Israel making it clear they'll attack without limitations, without any conditions, if Iran attacks them. And then multiple reports saying Iran's considering attacking Israel, but haven't decided to do so, but they've talked about it. And that Israel may attack even preemptively or if Trump requests. A bit all over the place, but conclusion is that there's no immediate plans for Israel to attack Iran. And according to Israeli media, there's no immediate plans for Iran to attack Israel either.
Well, it's just a function of how long before Iran attacks it for having all those U.S. air refuelers there. Not to mention now, as you pointed out, they're also bringing in these F-35s and F-16s. So it's again, it's just a matter of time before they get hit.
Yeah. Do you think Israel will be joining this war?
Yes. And then in about a week and a half, they'll be begging to get out of it. Just as has happened because this go around, back during the 12-day war in June of 2025, Israel was, they were begging the United States after 12 days, okay, get this stopped. And then Iranian missiles were not as accurate as they are now. They're much more accurate, as the West has conceded. Yeah, they're pretty damn accurate. So the last thing they want to get involved with is, becoming another big target. But that's where they're headed.
Yeah. Well, the U.S. Embassy in Jordan and Amman did put out a security alert. That's actually an interesting development. Due to a specific incredible threat, Jordanian authorities evacuated the international airport and seaport in Aqaba. We strongly advise all Americans to refrain from traveling to either the airport or seaport. Continue to follow all Jordanian authorities' security directives. U.S. Embassy in Amman continues to advise all Americans to avoid travel to military bases in Jordan. Funny enough, after that warning came in from the U.S., Jordanian government spokesperson said there was no decision to evacuate the international airport or the seaport, contradicting the alert from the U.S. Embassy. That's a bit bizarre. The U.S. Embassy asked for these two locations to be evacuated, said they're being evacuated, and then the Jordanian government said they haven't heard anything about it, and they're not evacuating. Is it common to get mixed messages like this? Is the Americans, do you think they're acting on different intel that the Jordanians don't have?
Well, that's possible. It wouldn't be the first time. But the other thing you're looking at here is they were talking more about that airport down south, and I don't think Iran's going to attack the international airport as long as the international airport continues to not host U.S. combat aircraft or air refueling aircraft.
Yeah. I don't know about the various airports in Jordan, but that one in the south was actually attacked, and the Israelis are seeing it as a warning. Some more reports on why things the last 24 hours have been pretty worrying. Washington has informed Tel Aviv that the U.S. intends to escalate military action against Iran in the next few days, according to Channel 11, citing U.S. and Israeli officials, number one. So that's on top of the military buildup. Report that Washington told Israel that they plan to escalate. Number two, according to Khan News, a lot of it is Israeli media. Israeli media's off the hook today. The U.S. informed Israel that it intends to escalate its strikes in the coming days. They also say that they've discussed the possibility that Iran could decide to... Okay, this is interesting. They've also discussed, Israel and U.S. officials discussed the possibility that Iran could decide to break all the rules and launch attacks against Israel, a move that would likely trigger an Israeli military response against Iran. Despite the scenario at this stage, the U.S. wants to keep Israel out of the current cycle of escalation. So according to Khan News, the U.S. warned Israel that they expect, or they're worried, or there's a possibility that Iran would do what you said they would do, and that is strike Israel. Because obviously we've seen all the aircraft, the American aircraft, for obvious reasons, because all the Gulf is getting struck on a daily basis. They're moving a significant amount of them to Israel. And they see, this is interesting, because the Americans see Israel as a place that is safe for their aircraft, because they're betting on the fact that Iran won't strike it. And then obviously Iran may escalate and strike that. The same way they were betting on Iran not striking desalination plants, and Iran did that in the last couple of days.
No, I wouldn't take that bet. Iran will be attacking Israeli military bases that are hosting U.S. combat aircraft, particularly if the United States increases its attacks on Iran, which they're threatening to do. This is the whole diplomatic effort that's taking place behind the scenes with Pakistan, China, Russia. It's fallen apart. I think my understanding is Mustafa Khamenei has said, we're not returning to the MOU, not in its current form. If we go back, there's going to have to be some major concessions by the United States up front. And at this point, Trump's not willing to make those concessions. He's still indulging his military fantasy that he can bring Iran to their knees and have them begging for mercy. But as we've seen, the United States right now is starting to drive U.S. aircraft out of Jordan. So it's, you got to say, where can they base their aircraft that the aircraft will be safe? Prince Saud Air Base in Saudi Arabia? No. Al Dhafra in UAE? No. Al Udeid? No. Al Isa, Bahrain? Oh, absolutely not. Ali Salman up in Kuwait? No. So it's not like the U.S. has a variety of alternatives they can fall back on. So now they fall back into Israel. And notice, even Israel now, I think they recognize that the accuracy of the Iranian missiles has dramatically increased, thanks in large measure to the Chinese Beidou system. And that's why they were pressing to get get your planes out of Ben Gurion, because Ben Gurion's really Israel's only link to the outside world for as far as civilian passenger aircraft goes. So, and I think all this writing and reaction you're seeing in the Israeli press, what does that tell you? That they're calm and confident? Oh yeah, we got this in hand? Or are they sort of, nervous in the service? I would suggest it's the latter.
The Trump last piece of news that came out that indicates escalation on the Western side. Trump has sent a message that's 3 hours ago, 3 hours ago. Again, according to Israeli media, most of it today, the military buildup is reported a lot by the American media, but all the warnings by Trump is coming from Israeli media. So take it as you wish. Trump has sent a message to the Gulf states stating that if a ceasefire is not reached this week, and this weekend's just ended, unless they mean next week, they must prepare for an escalation. But that was hours and hours ago. So that was yesterday, technically, end of Sunday. The Gulf must prepare for escalation. Now, it's, I was speaking to Aaron David Miller, the negotiator, and I asked a question. There was no good answer. Like he can't answer it. It's a difficult one. But when you see all these things, including the military buildup, can you tell whether that's being used as a bluff to pressure the other side in negotiations to get concessions, or whether it's a genuine buildup for military action? Is there a way to tell? And also, well, he made a point in his answer. He said there's no way to tell, but we know that this military buildup doesn't work against Iran. They've tried it time and time again. These threats and these escalations just don't work. So therefore, the only other interpretation is that it's a military buildup for plans to attack again, to escalate.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with him on that. That this bill, Trump's they're serious about the buildup. It's real. I know that those crisis action teams have been extremely active in the last 48 hours. So that means they're issuing orders and deployment orders, and they have to worry about birthing and where people are going to be housed, and you got a whole number of logistics requirements to go out. And if they're all huddling up in Israel's going to be next on the target list.
Yeah. So we've got an Iranian MP that said something that's a way out there. I'm not sure how much of it is serious, how much of it is just to rally the troops or get attention. Israeli principalist MP Abbas Papizadeh claimed that the U.S. plans to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz or whatever that means, before launching a ground offensive against Iran, warning that recent U.S. strikes on southern infrastructure are intended to prepare the battlefield for a wider military campaign. But he takes it a step further. He goes a bit too far. Abbas alleged that Washington would secure oil shipments to the U.S. and its allies before opening a land assault from the south, west, and east. He urged the rapid deployment of volunteer besieged forces across Iran's southern provinces and called for increased military preparedness, arguing that the U.S. attacks on transport infrastructure indicate a shift towards a potential ground operation. Now, he said the ground operation from the south, east, and west, which would only involve the Baluchis on the east and the Kurds on the west, which obviously are very small forces. I don't expect anything from either. but there's especially not the Baluchis. But what do you make of that statement, of that warning by by Abbas, the MP, the Iranian MP?
Yep, he's not a military guy, so
Yeah.
I don't. He's not really qualified to comment on it. What he's saying is nonsensical. Okay, so U.S. is going to conduct a ground operation. All right. Where are the troops being assembled? Do we have any evidence that you got a buildup of, say, 50,000, 100,000 troops? And let's remember, if you're going to bring in 100,000 U.S. Army personnel for a ground operation, that's 25% of the existing force, almost. Enormous number. But again, the logistics required to move that many people, then to get them based, and then to be in a secure location where they're not going to get shellacked with these, intermediate range ballistic missiles. I just like someone to, those who are saying this, okay, explain it to me. Show me what the plan is. And I don't care about the plan of attack. Just show me where you can get the personnel, how are you going to supply them, and how are you going to sustain them once they're deployed? And moreover, how are you going to deploy them? How are you going to get them onto target?
And what do you make of the East and West means Baluchis and Kurds? Is there any risk? We see the Kurds getting struck every day. Is there a potential that the Kurds or the Baluchis can get involved? Maybe talking about the Kurds, there's a peace story that came out today that Turkey, according to Khan News Israel, Turkey threatened to provide air support to Iran if Kurdish forces entered the country as part of Mossad's ground operation. So the Mossad were working with the Kurds to get a ground operation, and Turkey threatened to provide air support to Iran if that happened. Israeli officials say that when Trump was referring to when he claimed that Turkey had been on the verge of becoming involved in the fighting in Iran, this is what what Trump was referring to, that possibility that the Turks threatened against.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Kurds and Baluchis, they'll create insurgent forces, and that will require a counterinsurgency response, but they're not going to threaten the stability of the Iranian regime, the Iranian government. So it's just going to get a bunch of Baluch and Kurds killed.
How much control do you think the Pakistanis have over the Baluchis on their territory?
Well, they don't. The Baluchis are a problem for the Paks as well. Yeah. So that's where you've had both Iran and Pakistan cooperate in both cross-border operations and attacking, the Baluchis when they see them starting to build up. So this is just desperate Westerners trying to figure out how to get more locals killed. We don't care. Kill a Baluch, kill a Kurd. Yeah. There's no sweat off our nose. I mean, it's a very cynical, evil way to look at it, but that's how they look at it.
Well, funny enough, as we're speaking, a report just came in now. Iran has launched a second drone attack on the bases of the Kamala Party of Iranian Kurdistan in the Sadart area, Sulaimania. So the Kurds just got attacked again while we're speaking. So the Kurds are getting heavily targeted by Iran, more than I would have expected since the ceasefire, since the MOU. On a positive note, for those of you that believe that this won't escalate into a full-blown war again, or a ground operation, Israeli Channel 13 has reported that Qatar has presented a new proposal for a temporary ceasefire. They offered it to Iran and the US. And as part of that ceasefire, the US and Iran would halt attacks, and Iran would commit to opening 2 shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz. So opening in Omani side. Channel 13 quotes a US official who had the response, quote, "The likelihood of us agreeing is low." So one would argue that the likelihood of the Iranians agreeing to 2 shipping lanes, an Omani and Iranian one, is low. But the Americans are saying, even the Americans, the US official said, even the chances of the US agreeing is low. And you've got one other piece of news here that I don't know how you'd interpret it, Larry. US Energy Secretary Chris Wright said the following: Trump wants to end it with a peaceful agreement with Iran, but it takes 2 parties to do that. If they're ready to do that, that's the way it will end. If not, we will continue to ensure flow of traffic through the strait without Iran's cooperation. So, and that statement just makes it, for me, I see it as...
that's idiotic. God, bless how number of stupid people in leadership positions is just frightening. It is. Look, what Qatar just said was part of. I didn't reveal this until now, but we knew that Pakistan had proposed 4 sort of new conditions or new additions to get the MOU back on track. Number 1, a complete cessation of kinetic action before talks resume, which is what Qatar proposed. Strict radio silence, that absolute public blackout from both sides regarding the negotiations. Hormuz reopened via IRGC approved corridors. And then restoration of the original 14-point MOU, which is not going to happen. Iran's going to insist.
That's very different to the reported Qatari deal, which says 2 corridors.
That's how's that different? Hormuz reopened via IRGC approved corridors.
No. Your one, the Pakistani one, talks about the IRGC corridor, the Iranian corridor up north in the Strait of Hormuz. The Qatari one says 2 corridors, an Omani one and an Iranian one. Remember how the Omanis proposed?
Yeah, you're trying to make a difference that's not there, because the Omani corridor is not going to get opened as long as the United States does not fulfill the requirement of the MOU. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, but this proposal by Qatar is to actually open it. That's the proposal they made. That the U.S. official said the likelihood of the U.S. agreeing is low.
It's dead on arrival. But I think even the Pakistani one was dead on arrival too.
Why?
Because Iran's not going to go back to the original 14-point MOU. If they go back to the MOU, it's one, the United States is going to have to unfreeze assets now, not at some undefined point in the future. Second, it's going to have to do more than just lift the blockade, lift the oil sanctions. It's going to have to lift some other sanctions. Iran's not going to wait for any further promises. Oh, we'll get to it eventually. No. And Iran's made it clear. They don't see, well, and correctly so. Can you name me one agreement that the United States has signed that it's lived up to? An anti-ballistic missile treaty agreement with Russia, walked away from it. Intermediate nuclear forces agreement with Russia, walked away from it. The MOU, they broke every tenet of the MOU. I mean, the United States is completely untrustworthy on these agreements. They make agreements, but they don't abide by them.
Funny enough, just to give you an idea, while you were answering, okay, so while you're speaking, Kuwait intercepting drones. Kuwaiti air defenses are currently active and working against Iranian projectiles, drones. I assume it's drones. Explosions are heard over Sulaymaniyah province. Ground-based missiles have been launched from Kuwaiti territory towards Iran.
Yeah.
Okay,
so there's another report out saying they launched 2 ATACMS. The ATACMS can't get there, for God's sake. Jesus Christ.
Depends where in Iran. The ATACMS from Kuwait can get on the Kuwaiti-Iranian border in the south. West,
oh, yeah,
southwest.
That's a critical area.
No, not critical. Yeah. But I'm saying there's the southwest, they could be struck.
Yeah, they're going to blow up some
fighter aircraft.
Yeah, they only go 180 miles tops. So remember, why are you firing the missiles? You're firing the missiles to degrade Iran's ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. When Kuwait's firing missiles from up north, that has nothing to do with the missiles, coastal defense missiles and drones that are shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, they can't reach there. I agree.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, I said it's just showing off. It's like shooting off fireworks.
And J.D. Vance announced the birth of his fourth son, Alec Neil Vance. And Trump insisted, there's a video of Trump trying to get to celebrate with the Spanish team in the World Cup. And he's insisting to celebrate. And then the FIFA president came on stage and urged him to go off stage so he doesn't celebrate with them. I can't play the video because I think we'll get copyright struck. My producers criticized me for that. But this all happened in the last while you were speaking. So it's just a lot has happened.
Yeah, I've seen. I'm actually looking at the video right now.
Okay.
Pretty funny. Trump's there. Hey guys, hi, can I be? And they're like, get out of here.
All right. So that's the statement by Chris Wright saying that. But look, I see this statement that you got upset at. I see it as at least a good sign that, you know how I always say this is about the Strait of Hormuz for the US to get concessions from Iran, which will be a better, you know, if that's the plan by the US, if that's the strategy, it's better than a planned ground operation or planned escalation of the war or anything more significant or planning a prolonged conflict. If this is the goal is to achieve a concession by Iran on the Strait of Hormuz, either the US blinks or Iran blinks, and that will be the end of it. I don't expect it to escalate.
Okay, let's be clear. Iran's not blinking. US is getting no concessions. Period.
So that will be, if Iran doesn't blink, then the US has to blink because of the prices of oil, because of the economic, political impact, and the depleted munitions.
Correct.
So the statement by Chris Wright says that it makes it, in his words, he makes it pretty clear that this is about the Strait of Hormuz. If they don't want to, Iran can end it. Trump wants a peaceful solution, but if they don't end it, we're going to keep the Strait of Hormuz open ourselves without ending the war. That's how I interpret it. I hope this is the case because there's there's more and more people talking about.
The United States is going to keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
We will continue to assure flow of traffic through the strait without Iran's cooperation.
And how the hell do they do that? They haven't been able to do that in the last 5 friggin' months.
They use the Apache helicopters. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
I know they wind up upside down in the water. I mean, God Almighty! Really, this kind of ridiculous statement.
I meant they use the Black Hawk helicopters. That was meant to be the
joke.
Yeah,
there we go. There we go.
That's a joke. That's a better joke. Another piece of news came out today. So there's a report that came out earlier today that Mujtaba Khamenei is actually not even in Iran. Have you seen that report according to a Saudi news outlet?
Oh, I'm sure that's a reliable source. Yeah. Mujtaba is keeping a low profile because Israel and the United States want to kill him.
Saudi's Al-Hadath believes Iran's supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, is not in Iran at all, and that all messages and statements attributed to him are written by IRGC's chief, Ahmed Vahidi. By the way, Vahidi does have, I learned recently, Vahidi does have a lot of influence, as in one of the top three voices, top three decision makers in Iran.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
Do you think it's possible, like someone like Vahidi, because I've discussed this with a couple of guests, someone like Vahidi's actually calling most of the shots, and Mujtaba Khamenei is more there to rubber stamp them, to give the symbolic support to these positions?
Nope. Mujtaba is still in control. Yeah. And by virtue of his selection as the head of the Islamic Republic. So it is, but he's in sync with the IRGC on this. Remember he was sort of reluctant to go along with the MOU. He went along with it, said, okay, we'll give it a shot, and it proved his reservations were proved correct. His issue was you can't trust the United States. Well, no kidding.
There's reports of explosions in Tabriz, but that's really up north. I'm assuming this doesn't mean this being bombed. Just to be clear, this could be just missiles being launched there. Unconfirmed reports of an explosion heard in the Iranian city, that's Mashahar, but there's reports of an explosion in Tabriz. One more report on Iran there. There's the supreme leader. There's a report by Al Jarida. I think that's an Iranian media outlet. Iranian supreme leader Mujtaba Khamenei rejected a request by the Iraqi prime minister for a meeting. Obviously, You know, you're not gonna, when you're in hiding, you're gonna meet another leader and give your coordinates.
Yeah, but particularly since that Iraqi just came from Washington.
Exactly. there'd be a chip inside his kneecap or something.
Yeah.
That's a Kuwaiti
Oh.
news outlet, by the way, Al Jazeera. Oh, talking about Kuwait, can you show the video, Stephanie? Just to give you the idea of the damage. I'll give you an idea of what's happening in the Gulf. This is a Kuwaiti power station after an Iranian strike. That's a video from today. Kuwait reports that their power and water desalination plants were attacked for a second day in a row, resulting in fires at some facilities. This was probably one of them. Bloomberg reports that an Iranian attack caused a fire at a power and water desalination plant in Kuwait after striking the facility a second time. We've talked about Jordan, the base struck down south near the Israeli border that Israel saw as a warning. We've talked about Israel. And nothing on Saudi after the attack a couple of days ago. Nothing in the UAE after the warnings. Actually, this is an interesting observation. It could be good to get your thoughts on. You could remove the video, Stephanie. So yesterday morning, the Iranians warned that if their bridges get attacked again, they will strike the ports and airports in the UAE, including the two main airports, the one in Abu Dhabi and the one in Dubai. And all eyes were on last night on whether the Americans did bomb Iran yesterday. And the Americans bombed Iran yesterday, Larry, after soldiers were killed or announced to be killed. But after an Iranian threat that if you strike our infrastructure, we will strike Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the ports and airports. The UAE put out a statement calling for de-escalation. Qatar
is as well.
Yeah, and the Arab Council did too as well today. So all the Gulf came together and did that. Yesterday's strikes by the Americans, though, were some of the least significant in days. And bridges were not struck from what I've heard. So two ways of interpreting this. Preparation, and there's been relative silence from the Americans, preparation for much bigger strikes next week. Or, they push when they reach a certain lines, desalination plants, power plants struck in Kuwait, American bases getting hit on a daily basis, and now warning the Dubai and Abu Dhabi ports and international airports. Could that warning acted as a successful deterrent?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Iran doesn't make idle threats. And then the one to be concerned about is the United States struck a civilian nuclear power plant today.
Yeah.
And Iran has said, you hit our nuclear power plant, we're going to go after yours, maybe even up to including Dimona.
But that was one that's being constructed, not constructed yet, from what I understand. I could be wrong. I read it this morning.
It's still a civilian target. It's not a war. It's not a legitimate military target.
But at least we haven't seen, the U.S. attacked the Darkovan nuclear power plant site in Khuzestan, Iran. The U.S. fired several missiles hitting the site of the Darkovan power plant under construction at around 3:39 a.m. today. So exactly 24 hours ago, 25 hours ago. There's a statement here by the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. The American regime's attack on the under construction Darkovan nuclear power plant site, an attack on a peaceful nuclear facility under safeguard, is an overt crime against international law. Darkovan is a symbol of self-reliance and progress for Iran, and this aggression will only strengthen the resolve of Iran's nuclear industry experts to continue the path of advancement. That's not good, but at least bridges were not struck. That's the red line that Iran gave. And by the way, Trump did say he's going to open the gates of hell yesterday, and nothing followed, which I would like to see as a good sign, unless the gates haven't opened. Trump's words.
They're working in on opening the gates. Of course, you got to find them first, but
yeah. So that's on that front. On the Gulf front, we've talked about. On the escalation, we've talked about the possibility of returning to war, the possibility of this de-escalating. We've talked about the new proposal by Qatar, incredibly good proposal. We've talked about the statement by Chris Wright. We've talked what came out of Iran. There's actually a couple of interesting statements made by Arachi in a long-form interview he did about the negotiations. He says the following: there were extensive discussions over whether we should resume negotiations, In the end, it was decided that we would enter negotiations primarily to establish proof that we had exhausted diplomatic options so that later no one could say, quote, if you only had negotiated, there would have been no war. So he's saying that the Iranians entered negotiations to get a deal just to show the world that they are trying the diplomatic solution, knowing it won't work. Then he talks about how, Arachi explains how there's a misconception that it was his order for Iran to return to war with the US. Oh, no, sorry, before that one, he also talks about why Iran decided to end the 12-day war. Okay, yes, sorry, I'm all over the place. So he made the statement about going into negotiations to show the world for a diplomatic solution. Then he addresses a misconception that it was his order for Iran to return the war. Quote, well, it was not my order. It was a decision of the opposition to pursue certain objectives regarding Iran. We tried to move the opposition's position towards avoiding war. Let me explain, because this misunderstanding needs to be corrected. The idea that negotiations caused the war, or that we negotiated and then fighting resumed, is not the correct way to describe what happened. The negotiations were not my personal decision. They were a collective decision. So he's talking about that split between the people that did not want the negotiations in an MOU, and he's being used as a symbol of these negotiations, diplomatic solution. And he's saying, first, I was not the main leader of these diplomatic negotiations, and number two, the negotiations did not lead for war. It's not that we don't have war because of these negotiations. So the reason I'm bringing that up is there is a split in Iran, and the people that were against a diplomatic solution, the people that were against an MOU, they're like, hey, we told you so. They're the loud voices now. They're the voices being listened to. So what Trump did by bombing Iran after this MOU has made it harder, much, much harder to actually reach a deal. Who in Iran right now, who in Iran is going to be able to go back to the negotiating table, present an MOU and a deal to the Iranian people, and not have his head on a plate after what the Americans did?
Well, again, Iran's going to make certain demands that I outlined. You're going to unfreeze assets now, not at some point in the future. You're going to lift all the sanctions that are capable of being lifted without congressional action now, not in the future. Those are going to be two inflexible demands, and Israel's got to get the hell out of southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
You don't do that, there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. The Lebanese president is in Washington right now as well. And the IRGC said they fired at more ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Strategic petroleum reserves are collapsing, as you know. U.S. exports of oil. You might like this one. You've been really following that market, the energy market. So this is probably the last interesting story for the day. If you can show this chart here. By the way, Iran. Okay, CENTCOM has announced the beginning of the 9th round of strikes. So we're seeing the U.S. bomb Iran right now. There's explosions across Iran being reported. So again, I think all eyes should be, I'll talk about the chart in a second. All eyes should be on what is targeted today. We're going to see an Iranian retaliation. We'll see what they retaliate. CENTCOM has announced the resumption of the military campaign. So this one here, with the Department of Energy's crude oil inventory at an all-time low, U.S. crude oil exports plummeted this past week after record highs. So you know how the U.S. exports just skyrocketed as the U.S. was going through the strategic petroleum reserves? These exports have completely dropped now. Now, there's two ways of looking at it. This is to go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's right. I was going to say it could be a lot of oil came out of the Strait of Hormuz, so there's no need for the U.S. to export to these countries. They're just buying out of that oil. Or the U.S. needs to preserve a strategic petroleum reserve, so it doesn't have the capacity to export anymore.
Now, no, I need to correct you. The oil the U.S. exports is sweet crude. It's not what makes it. Doesn't make diesel and aviation fuel. It can, but the refineries generally are not set up to do that. The refineries that are set up to do that need sour crude. That's what comes out of the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf's not exporting like West Texas Intermediate or sweet oil. It's exporting primarily high sulfur content oil. That's what's used to make diesel and aviation fuel. That's where the shortage is. It's a global shortage right now. And So U.S. can increase their exports of sweet crude. Fine. It doesn't change the picture for diesel and aviation fuel. That's the thing people need to understand.
Yep. And there's one more chart I want to show you. That's the petroleum reserves. If you can show that as well, the strategic petroleum reserve in the US. I posted this chart and I said to people, I said, look, if you're wondering why I do think Trump is going to tackle pretty soon, this chart should explain it. This and the depleted munitions.
Yeah.
So you could manipulate paper prices of different assets, but you cannot manipulate the hard assets themselves.
Yeah, and remember what you've got there. You can't just keep drawing down, because you got to keep roughly 20% of it in those storage caverns. Because once you get below the 20% level, you're going to threaten the structural integrity of those caverns, because you have to pump water in. You know, Chris Martenson has really done an excellent job of explaining all that.
And lastly, there's just one article. I was looking down, you could remove the chart. It's a long article, so I've asked it to be summarized. The article argues that Iran is pursuing a debasification strategy, systematically forcing U.S. forces to retreat farther from Iran by repeatedly striking regional bases after degrading radar networks. That's an interesting explanation, which you know about already. So the radars, the early warning radars that the Iranians struck, so the strategy there was to make it easier to strike the rest of the region, especially Israel, because the way the Patriots work is they don't sit there scanning the entire sky when there's missiles flying over to Israel, for example, or any country. They usually get coordinates from the early warning radars on where the missile's hiding, the vicinity of these missiles.
Right.
And then start scanning that vicinity, that area that the missile's heading towards. So that's why these early warning radars are so important for the Patriots, etc., to be able to intercept incoming missiles. So these early warning radars that Iran has been degrading from the 12-day war and again at the beginning of this war is paying off right now by allowing Iran to have better precision, number one. And then if you add to it the maneuverability of Iranian missiles and the Chinese Beidou system that allows better coordinates and better precision, put all these things together, and that kind of trifecta has allowed such incredible targeting by the Iranians. And we're seeing the results of it now in the daily satellite images coming in with the bases, the damage to the bases.
Yeah, that's why the United States has deployed AWACS. AWACS can make up for some of that, but again, it's limited. It's not, you know, the Iranians took out between Bahrain and Kuwait and Al Udeid in Qatar, at least 2 radars worth over $1 billion apiece. And then 2 or 3 other radars that were in the $300-400 million range. So they've done some just damage that cannot be replaced anytime in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Yep. It says, after degrading radar networks, Iran has shifted to gathering fuel depots. Iran has shifted to targeting fuel depots, drone hangars, refueling aircraft, and barracks to make nearby bases too costly to operate from. It contends that the U.S. is especially sensitive to casualties and the loss of high-value assets, citing reported attacks on bases in Saudi, Qatar, and Jordan that allegedly damaged aircraft and caused U.S. casualties. According to the article, this has pushed U.S. assets back towards Israel, where the article argues they may still face challenges due to Israel's reportedly strained air defense interceptor stocks. So what the Iranians did in their debasification strategy is they've degraded the radars, then degraded America's ability to project power and efficiently strike Iran, pushing their aircraft away to avoid expensive assets from being damaged, and pushing troops away to avoid casualties. And where do they push them to? We've already discussed this many times, but it's good to kind of summarize what the article says. Push them to Israel. Now, Israel's a better protected target because it has all these air defenses and it has the deterrent that Iran.
They don't have all the air defense, but let's humor them. Let's pretend they do.
So they have the Patriots and Pax, etc., but they also have the David Sling and the Iron Dome, which they're not effective.
Which suck.
Okay, so they have their own air defenses. So that, along with the Israeli involvement and the more aggressive rules of engagement by Israel, that don't have the same limitations as the Americans, act as a deterrent that Iran may not want them to get involved. But that's betting that Iran doesn't want to get them to get involved. Eventually, if there's enough military equipment there, the Iranis will start targeting it. Once the time is right, it will make sense for them, even if it risks getting Israel involved. Because number one, it's worth it, because a lot of military assets of the Americans are there. It's necessary. And also Israeli air defense munitions are also depleted, just like the Americans are. And as you said, they're not.
Why do you think during the first 42 days of this war that the Israelis relied on two-thirds of their air defense was provided by the U.S., not by them?
Yeah. That was a heartbreaking report. Bothers me.
Imagine. These air defense systems are completely ineffective against ballistic missiles. I'm sure it sounds like you'll be able to get Ted Postal on to talk. So.
So the US is striking Iran right now. So there's videos of it. That happens every night. So it's nothing new, just for the audience. We're going to see alerts in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Jordan again later tonight. And these are expected now. The things to be on the lookout for would be other Gulf countries struck, especially the UAE and Saudi. And then the targeting. This is what everyone's on the lookout for. Will we see energy infrastructure struck? And I think that would make the difference. So fingers crossed. Any final comments or anything I missed, Larry?
No, you covered it. We'll be back tomorrow night. It's like Groundhog Day.
You in that movie. All right, man. Yeah. Good chatting.
All right, bud. Later. Bye-bye.
See you, Larry. Take care. All right, guys. This is the coverage for today. If you don't see me live again, it means the targeting was as expected. So I'm going to finish off for the day, go live if there's anything important, and go through the comments as I do every day, see what you guys think of this discussion and other discussions today. And I think you should check out the one we had a discussion with, or I had a discussion with Matt Bracken, former Navy SEAL, and I'm going to make him a regular guest. He was just full of knowledge. I really enjoyed that conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, because if I see you today, it means it's bad news. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.